Hello, everybody. How are you guys doing? How are you guys feeling? Now, today I want to talk about something that honestly shook me, okay? There's this case out of Georgia that's getting a lot of attention, right? And I feel like, we got to talk about it. Like, her name is actually Adriana Smith. She was a black woman, 30 years old, pregnant, and a nurse, She went to the hospital not feeling well, and they sent her home, right? So the next day she was gasping for air. Her boyfriend took her back, to the hospital, and that's when they found blood clots in her brain. She was declared brain dead, right? But because she was 9 weeks pregnant, the hospital put her on life support to try to keep the baby alive, even though she was already gone. Like, this story is just insane. So let's get into it, okay? So Adriana goes to Northside Hospital, right? They don't really check her, thoroughly. They just send her home. The next thing you know, she's barely breathing and rushed to the Armory Hospital. That's when they find out that she's had blood clots and was brain dead. Now, instead of like letting her just rest in peace, they kept her body going because of Georgia's, abortions laws, like the abortion laws. Since they, heard a fetus and they heard like the heartbeat, they made the decision to keep her body alive to try to, carry the baby, even though, her family did not agree. And this action just brings up a lot of conversation, okay? And I think we have to talk about this, okay? This really happened in 2025, guys. And when I heard this, all I could think about was The Handmaid's Tale, The Handmaid's Tale, The Handmaid's Tale. If you ever watched The Handmaid's Tale or read the book, you already know. You know the story. That story is like basically about, a world where women are literally forced to give birth, where their bodies are treated like government property, and that's kind of what happened here. And that's what this feels like. Like, Adriana's dead, but because she was pregnant, the state stepped in and basically took over. It's like they saw her, as an incubator, in my humble opinion, not a person. And what's worse is she's black, right? And this ain't the first time that we've seen or heard or, about the system not caring or respecting black women, and especially using black women in the medical field. A lot of, the developments that we know now as far as the OB was experimented on by black women. I'm going to get into that later, but I want to get into the story. The baby, they're calling him baby Chance. The baby was diagnosed, and the word is kind of difficult to say, but the baby was diagnosed with this condition, which basically is, and it means when fluid is in the brain, right? And that could lead to disabilities or worse. There's no guarantee that he'll make it. And even if he does, what kind of life like would he have? Plus, who's paying for this? The hospital bills, the care, the legal mess. Her family is already grieving, and now they might be stuck with the cost of keeping her body on machines for months. And this is just insane, right? And here's the bigger problem. The bigger problem is, and let's talk, like, let's be real. This is what black women go through every day in like healthcare. We are not listened to. We're dismissed. Our pain isn't taken seriously. That's why so many black women don't trust the medical system. And honestly, can we blame them? And this isn't new. Remember Henrietta Lacks? Back in 1951, doctors took her cancer cells without her consent. These cells are called HeLa cells, right? And they have been used in countless medical breakthroughs, from polio vaccine to cancer treatments. But, her family didn't know for decades that this was happening. They never saw a dime from this woman's cells being used. And like, if you think about like J. Marion Sims, often called the father of modern gynecology, he performed experimental surgeries on enslaved black women without anesthesia. Their pain was ignored, their bodies used as medical, advancement without consent. There are like just stories from the past, basically stating things like this, where it establishes a pattern, of the system, just how they devalue, women of color, and just our bodies are being used as, without our permission, and different things of that nature. So when I hear stories like this, it really breaks my heart. This story needs attention, not just because of what happened to, Adriana, but because it's part of the bigger issue, like reproductive rights, racism in healthcare, how black women are consistently pushed to the side. So yeah, I'm calling that this is like this real life Handmaid's Tale situation, kind of, receive some light, receive some attention, and we don't just sweep this under the rug like every other thing that's not sensationalized, or that people can't use, then they don't want to pay attention to it. So just let me know what you guys think about the things that I'm saying, and what you think about this story. I love you guys to pieces, and bye-bye.
11 Alive first told you about Adriana Smith last week. She went to the hospital 8 weeks into her pregnancy, complaining of a headache, and just hours later, doctors declared her brain dead. It's a story that's making headlines all around the globe, sparking debates over Georgia's heartbeat law.
Tonight, our Cody Alcorn spoke exclusively with Smith's mother again about the emotional toll of this pregnancy, and she says the state left them no choice but to continue. He's live now from Emory University Hospital in Midtown. Cody, we know this is a situation that has really been taxing for this family.
It really has, Jennifer and Ron. Adriana was moved here to Emory Midtown on Tuesday. She's expected to remain on life support through August, when doctors plan to deliver her baby by C-section. 30-year-old Adriana Smith is 22 weeks pregnant.
But she's not there. She's not there. But the baby's there.
April Newkirk says her daughter was declared brain dead on February 19th. Adriana was 8 weeks pregnant.
We wanted to know if she was to abort, would she have a chance at her life? And they said there was no chance or no hope.
In Georgia, the state's heartbeat law bans abortions after a fetal heartbeat is detected.
So at that point, we continued with the pregnancy that we didn't have a choice or a say about. And I just want to be clear on something. We want her to have her baby. We want her life to continue throughout her children. But at the same time, to see her lay there like that, for that length of time, the grieving process for us, it can't even start, because every time we go, we grieve and we hurt. And it's just unreal. It's unreal for anyone to go through this.
April says they named her daughter's baby Chance.
Because to me, he's getting a second chance.
Despite his mom's condition,
the baby is the right weight, a little bit over, which is a good sign. He has his legs, his toes, his limbs. Heartbeat is good and strong. It's just maybe because of the loss of consciousness with my daughter, the lack of oxygen that the baby didn't get. So that's where the cerebellum comes into place.
Baby Chance's future is still uncertain.
So the journey is for baby Chance to survive, and whatever condition God allows him to come here in, we're going to love him just the same, and we're going to embrace him.
Adriana does have a 7-year-old son. His name is Chase, and he has no idea what is happening. He still thinks his mom is just asleep. Now, as you mentioned, this whole case has sparked a conversation. It has sparked debate about the gray areas of the state's heartbeat law. And as reported last week, when I first sat down with April, she believes the heartbeat law needs to be re-examined and changed.
Cody, certainly a very difficult situation all the way around there. Thank you so much for bringing us that update tonight.